I do ask that you guys don't send this out on Facebook or anything, because we're going to have another meeting with everybody else. Is that any way you can record it? Please don't post this on Facebook, only because we're going to have a different meeting that we'd like to invite everybody else to.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, great.
Then let's see, because usually we do only because the people in the neighborhood are curious. But, yeah. Would it be okay? So maybe you could send me an email and tell me what I can share, and maybe I can share that in the context of being like leading into the next meeting. Hey, we met with them. These are some of the big things we're doing. Come to this meeting and you'll find out all the details.
That would be perfect. And it's everything's public record. It's just what we would try to do, and I'll go over it in detail here in a moment, kind of like this process, so you guys have a general idea, but definitely wanted to get out in front of you guys as a courtesy before we head up to invite the rest of your neighbors to a meeting. Seeing that you guys are on the executive team, I wanted to have this one-on-one opportunity ahead of time, and so we can have kind of a little bit of dialogue before we go out to the full neighborhood.
That sounds fine.
Awesome.
Another just general question, is there any work being done on the part of all of the different taxation districts? Like, there's a lot of planning for growth going on in a lot of different ways. And so we're dealing with all the players right now, and it's really confusing for most residents, and it's hard to keep track of that there's plans from the school district, the city, ACHD, independent developers, all of these things. Would it be possible to have some kind of a comprehensive planning presentation with like different agencies together to show us kind of like what the big vision is?
Yeah, that's certainly, that's a very good question. One of the things that most important to note is that anytime that there is a planning effort, say for instance, this particular project, the city of Boise sits on our planning team. And so does Valley Regional Transit. And so even though it may not look like it in the public sphere that we're not all talking together, but we are.
I totally know that you are talking together, but we need to get that out in the public a little more, because we have a lot of residents who are really freaking out and they don't have all the answers. And when everyone messages to us separately, I mean, I understand that there's some strategic value to that. But if the city of Boise is on this committee and they've been involved in developing this, then we need to have that conversation together, because what I'm hearing from residents is that their experience is that if we call the city, they say, oh, that's ACHD. And if we call ACHD, they say, oh, that's the school district. And we're just saying, how do we know that, we're not going to have crashes on State Street, or we're going to have enough schools, or the EMTs are going to show up at our house? And so not having that cohesive message, while I see the political value, I do, is really causing a lot of stress for our residents.
Yeah, certainly. Do you have some specific examples of where we're seeing that nexus, that the communication is occurring? Is it so in general? And I don't want to derail this. And I think these are really good questions. And we can certainly be helpful.
Oh, there looks like that's Jamie Lou. So I'll be quick. I think that's Jamie Lou who's joining us now. But so I would say, in terms of all of the development that's happening right on State Street. So right now we have Capital City Development Corporation saying we're going to do a urban renewal district, and we have you saying we're going to do a comprehensive plan, and we have an independent contractor saying we're going to move in 300 people, and nobody will tell us if the EMTs will show up at our house, right? Or if there are going to be major traffic problems. And so when we hear about these big plans, if we could hear about them in concert, because honestly, I think, like, I personally am really excited about an urban renewal district. I'm not necessarily against development, but when I can't get anybody to tell me if our elderly residents will have services of some sort, or how it's going to affect the library, then that puts me in a really bad Jimmy in the middle position.
Right. Well, my only suggestion, especially when it comes to urban renewal district, one of the things is we also participate with the urban renewal district. I know a lot of my not my employees, but my boss attends those meetings. So in short, the best way in which we can help you is to know specifically what the issue is at hand, and maybe collectively come and chat about that. But there is always one project manager who leads the effort. And so that one project manager would be the one who gets those teams together to have that conversation with you. But if
Okay.
it's comprehensive planning in general, and I think what you're talking to is a little bit of all that whole comprehensive piece, that is the city of Boise. That would be their EMT, which is also part of the city of Boise. And so services, what services are rendered, that too is also part of the city of Boise. So if it's that comprehensive evaluation of what's going on, yeah, just knowing what it is you want to hear about and maybe narrowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, I can narrow it down for you. So I would love to do a presentation for our neighborhood in Veterans Park about how the various powers that be are going to deal with the urban renewal district and the proposed State Street location for interfaith sanctuary, and make sure that our services.
Right.
Okay, so growth is coming. We want everyone to tell us that we're going to have schools, that we're going to have fire, that we're going to have water, that all of these agencies have very different expertise, are going to take care of the services that our current residents need.
Right. So being specific that it is about a, and this is not why we're having this conversation today, and I can't speak out of turn of what the efforts are with the interfaith sanctuary. That is definitely a city of Boise is making the decisions to authorize that, and that is certainly outside of my capacity.
No, I'm not asking you at all to comment on interfaith sanctuary. I'm saying that we can say that specifically a large amount of growth is planned for our neighborhood and our immediate environs. And we need to look at the scope of that growth. And then if we are going to see, say, the city of Boise, we can't make a judgment as residents about whether this is a good plan unless we know from all of you how it's going to affect our services. So for example, switching away from interfaith, that's an ongoing proposition. So there's some limits on what we can discuss. Your boss sits on urban renewal. When we present urban renewal to our neighborhood, we need you all to come to us and say, hey, we have a plan and this isn't going to destroy your neighborhood. And then we'll be like, that sounds really cool because we all know we need more housing.
So Kate, for the sake of this evening's presentation, why don't you and I table this conversation and follow up with it, and maybe I can help you direct you a little bit better in who those right players are, specifically what the question is about, what it pertains to, because comprehensive planning or that big scaled out planning and how it interacts with so many different parts of services available, that is definitely something that needs to be tabled and really have that conversation on who those parties are, because it's really going to be, and you hear it often, right? We always say, well, that's City of Boise, or that's ACHD, or that's Urban Renewal, CCDC, whatever it may be, that's the school district. We all work together project-based on issues that are going to impact your neighborhood. We work as a team. Collectively, we're all on the team. But when it's something as large scale in which you're talking about growth in general, that does have one person, one entity who's leading that charge, while the rest of us have a supportive role in that. So
okay. Yeah,
I think
we can plan that as long as you can get the information to that person so that they could answer these specific questions in one format. You and I can work on that. So that is good. And I am sorry to take off track.
I definitely just want to table that, because I think that we could really derail the efforts that we're trying to have the conversation, specifically what I'm here to have the discussion about. Yours in particular is one that's a little bit larger scale and definitely outside the scope of what tonight's meetings and the purpose of tonight's meeting is. And I will do the best I can to put you in touch with the right people to have those conversations, but I don't think that I'm necessarily the one to be leading that charge. There are certainly people who have more of a role in that comprehensive planning effort as it pertains to the city of Boise. Does that work, Kat? Is it Kate?
I am happy to continue having this conversation in another way. Yeah.
Fabulous. So I do want to just kind of, out of respect for everybody's time, kind of get us back on track and kind of why we're having this meeting today. And before I get started, there's somebody on here who I've invited, and it's because she's assisting me in particular to Collister Neighborhood Association and just the Collister corridor. And that's Sarah. Sarah's our intern. She's been with us. She's an intern at BSU in urban studies, and so she's been with us for a couple months now and will be with us the duration of this project. So she's just here to help take notes and definitely just didn't want you guys to know who the stranger's face is that's on Zoom without you guys having that opportunity to meet her. Sarah, certainly thank you for being here and for everybody else. Before I get started, I just want to make a quick little introduction. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for Ada County Highway District, and reason I'm here is really just kind of start the conversations as it pertains to the corridor, the Collister corridor. And this is a courtesy. We definitely want to come out and have this conversation with you first, because as Kate highlighted, you guys take and field a lot of questions from several of the people in your neighborhood. And so I didn't want you to get blindsided as we move forward into a more public meeting. I didn't want you guys to be blindsided about what's going on in your neighborhood when you're expected to know what's going on in your neighborhood. And so I wanted to have just kind of a smaller meeting today and go over the details of what's coming down the pipeline. But first and foremost, I just want to be very clear, we're not constructing anything this summer. So just if there's concerns that we're going to go tear up your street, that's not the case. And so I do have a PowerPoint, and Kate, you're going to have to give me permission to share it, but it's just kind of give us a little bit of an outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. And so with that being said, I don't know how many of you guys have been engaged in these projects before, but I'm certain you guys all have. You're quite the active neighborhood association. We do appreciate that. But one of the efforts that I'm trying to really hone in here is the fact that we're coming to you to help us understand what you want your neighborhood to look like. And so we're not coming in here, and I'm being upfront, we don't have any preconceived notion of what we're going to turn your street into. What we're trying to do is really start this engagement now, so that way you can help us determine what that vision is for your neighborhood. And why I'm emphasizing that it's so important is because it's not my job to come in there and make a vision for what your neighborhood looks like. And I want to speak to another project that we had that really gave us the foundation to have these discussions. I'm not sure if you guys have been following, but the Kootenai Street. Kootenai has a similar type. It's, just is similar to your guys' road. It's been one that a lot of people have been using now as their main corridor in which to access other parts of the neighborhood, even though Overland is an adjacent road. So we went into Kootenai, and we had this exact same discussion, was how are we going to turn your neighborhood street back to your neighborhood, and what does that vision look like? And it really gave ACHD a foundation on how we approach these projects moving forward. And so with that, with your permission, Kate, I'd like to go ahead and share my screen for the PowerPoint. Let me see. You guys can see this.
You should have all the permissions you need.
Got it. Okay. All right. Give me one moment. Let me stop this real quick. I don't know why that's not coming through. All right. There we go. Show you something in. By now you think we'd have this all figured out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this, and I don't need to go back through the introductions, but just so you guys are aware, I have been with ACHD for 6 years plus now, and so this is not my first project. I'm not sure. There we go. Okay, just quickly to give you guys an idea, this is our planning area. So the project that we're talking about, which is a concept level project. So concept means I'm engaging with you first to help us determine what it is we're actually going to make this street, what it's going to look like. And in a concept, if we get it adopted, in other words, if the whole neighborhood, you guys all agree that this is what your vision is for your neighborhood, what happens after that is the concept actually has to be adopted by the ACHD Commission. And at which point, following that adoption, then we move it into what's called design. So in concept and in design phases of a project, in design, we actually go back out to you guys a second time and said, you guys help us, the nitty gritty of a project, you guys help us make a determination what that looks like. So we have two types of engagement opportunities with you and your neighborhood. But the project boundaries are the whole the whole corridor of Collister. So that's Hill to State Street. Even though we recognize that we've already have constructed the intersection there, but this is just the following piece of that. And we've already have a project from Hill North on Collister, so that are both underway. Just as I highlighted this, it's really, guys, I'm just coming out here to facilitate this process to help you guys walk us through and create that vision for your neighborhood. I can't emphasize that enough. I don't know what your neighborhood looks like. We're going to rely on you guys to help us figure out what that becomes. And there's two ways in which we want to do it. We definitely want to approach it for a bike and pedestrian piece. And we also want to look at the vehicle part. So, you know, what is important to your neighborhood? What does that vision look like? And all of those modes of travel, are we taking into consideration when we're trying to get people to navigate this space? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We've been out here before. We were out here years ago regarding sidewalks on Collister, and that project, as you can imagine, and as you see today, never came to fruition. And partly it's because our approach was much different than what our approach is today. So these are just our project purposes. Our project goals, I kind of highlighted that just a moment ago, but it really is, how do we look at all modes of travel on Collister and how do we align that with the vision of your neighborhood? I'm not sure if you guys were in the neighborhood back in 2018, and I was out there, the Northwest Neighborhood Bike Ped Plan. I wrote it several years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Both of those were adopted, and Collister was identified as a location from your residents that said, do something about this street. Either I don't feel comfortable walking it, I don't feel comfortable riding my bike on it, the traffic, the speeds, all of these things, like I just don't feel safe on my neighborhood street. Can you help us? And that's how we came about. So with the concept study and this whole process, we're acknowledging that we really do want to create an environment that is comfortable for everybody to navigate that space. I alluded to this back in 2011. I didn't, but my colleagues had come out to you guys before and to try to explore types of traffic and pedestrian facilities. As you guys are well aware, nothing came of that. It never got adopted by the commission. It never moved forward. There were a lot of concerns about right-of-way impacts, like, you know, what are we going to be taking people's front lawns to put in sidewalks, right? Because the old notion was we used to widen a road to put in sidewalks. And so that was the concern. We also went back there in 2011 and said, we already had a plan ready for you guys. We were going to put in sidewalks. That's not the case this time. We don't have a plan. Our plan is to work with you to create one. And so these were all of the lessons we learned the first time we came out to talk with you guys. And, you know, we wanted to come back and visit again and see, is there an opportunity based with this new approach? Is there an opportunity we can enhance your guys' neighborhood? Like I highlighted earlier, the Northwest Neighborhood Bike and Ped Plan back in 2015, we did receive 37 public comments. So when we engaged with your neighborhood, 37 comments, just about Collister alone. And 37 doesn't seem like a lot, but is actually quite a lot. And in addition to that, we've also received comments from the school district as well as from the city of Boise that said, hey, can we make this neighborhood, can we make it safe? Can we make it safe for bikes and peds and for motorists as well? What can we do? And so this is how this all came about. The State Street Collister Drive intersection, we actually pulled some comments from that as well. Just recently, I went and dug around. And again, we heard several comments from people that said, yes, the intersection, fix it, but hey, what are you going to do about the rest of the road? And you guys have some pretty important attractors on both sides. On the northern segment, you have the trails and access to foothills. So people want to get to the foothills. But on the southern side, you guys have the library and the coffee shops and all of these attractors that people are out there engaging on your street. And so we wanted to definitely go out there and start talking about what are we going to do to make that more comfortable. So this is why I'm here tonight. My first talk was going to be with you guys. Like, I just wanted to have this one-on-one small group engagement to talk about what your guys' concerns are, things we need to take into consideration. After that, we've also been talking with adjacent property owners, adjacent businesses. So we met with the Collister property management folks down there. We'll meet with the coffee shop, all of those attractors. We met with them and said, what's important to you? What does this look like? We're also doing it with several, folks who reside on Collister, folks who maybe originally came out and said, we really, the first time, had a very vocal voice at the table, and we're reaching out to them to have some more engaging conversations. And partly because to be you guys and you and your neighbors who are going to have to help champion this, right? It's your neighborhood, it's not ours. If your neighborhood would come out and say, we want nothing, and that's what we hear as the loudest vocal crowd, then that we'll walk away. Like, we are not ones to sit here. We really just want people to be engaged and to help champion this, because it's your neighborhood. And it's so important that you guys help us kind of through this process of what this looks like and what your vision is, because we don't want to come in there with this preconceived vision of what your neighborhood's going to look like. So the outreach efforts, and this is why I wanted to get out in front of you guys, because once this gets publicized and we start doing the door hangers, people are going to come to you and say, what is this about? So we're having our first public open house on June 24th. From the first one is at 3:30 and the second one is at 5:30. They're both virtual. So we will do some engagement online through kind of the same format we've got here. And then followed by that, we'll have an online survey. This is the first of several outreach efforts. So this isn't going to be the only time that I come to visit with you guys. Once we go through this open house, this particular open house that'll be on June 24th will be just more focus groups. It'll be more help us determine what your vision is, help us determine where there's issues on your road. Are there locations you don't feel safe? Are the speed, are people speeding through the neighborhood, or are there a lot of close calls about kids, walking on the street because there aren't sidewalks? Those are the conversations that we're going to have on June 24th. And based off of what happens on June 24th and the feedback we get, we're going to take all of that. We're going to come back to you guys later in the month of August, and we're going to have a second open house. Well, August or September, depending on the timeline. We're going to have that second open house, and that's where we're going to bring some options available. We're going to engage with you again. And based off of how we come out of the second open house, we'll make a determination if we need to do it a third time. And why I say that's important, the example I gave you guys earlier about Kootenai Street, we went out there, had the conversation the first time, went back out the second time, had some options, did some voting, figured out, some engagement with the neighbors, and it was too close to call. It was, I want to say, in the 60 people in favor and 50 something people against. The margin was too small for us to say confidently that we have had and identified the best solution for that neighborhood. So we went back to the drawing table and went out a third time. And the third time is when we finally had, it was 78% that said they were in favor of a certain solution, and the remaining were uncertain, and the other piece were against. And so why I say that's so important is because we're going to do this until we get it right. And there is no time frame for completion on the concept study. In a perfect world, the sooner we get the concept study adopted, the sooner we get back out to your neighborhood to start construction. We were back out in the north end on 13th Street as well. I'm sorry. Yeah, 13th Street and Kootenai Street. And both of those projects are now in design and will be in construction next year. So we are trying to move these projects fast. We're not trying to have a concept and then 10 years come back and build it. We're actually trying to have the concept move right into a design year, a right-of-way year if it's necessary, and then a construction year. So our goal is to not have these projects linger for too long. Partly it's because turnover in a neighborhood happens often, and we definitely want to see the outcomes of our conversations actually come to fruition. So I see a chat. Let's see. Maybe, okay, so is it, Kate, you're just out here?
Sorry, I was just throwing that out there. I didn't mean to interrupt your.
Yeah, and actually this really kind of concludes the introduction of what we're doing, and I kind of want to just open it up for just some general dialogue. And so, Kate, certainly you're welcome to speak to this, but anyhow, if there's no questions about the public outreach process, I do just want to open it up for just general dialogue and just a conversation. So Kate is highlighting, and if you want to speak to what you wrote here.
Sure. So we have been, over the past 2 years, and Jamie Lou has been involved much longer than I have, but over the past 2 years that I've been heavily involved, this is the #1 issue on every single survey we do, have done, I should say. And so people are very interested in low stress bike and walk, better traffic flow and access. I'd love to bring in, I've been talking to the Collister school parent teacher organization. We have kids who are walking in pretty unsafe conditions up Collister. I am a resident on Collister, so I'm pretty passionate about this. But yeah, I think it's really good. I think there are lots of good options. There's a lot of space that's currently in the right of way that could be used to provide some amenities. But I'll just kind of follow your lead, and if you can loop me in just personally on anything you might want to do. And if you would like, I can bring it up to the board at the next meeting. I don't see any reason we couldn't send out all of this input stuff via our mailers and our mailing list.
Okay. No, we'd love to. Kate, no, we'll definitely get you all the information to help promote the June 24th meeting. I did actually, we already had a meeting with Debbie Bloom because we knew early on she had been closely following the Kootenai project, and that's kind of where her and I, amongst other areas of interest, we engaged. But yeah, so I did meet with Debbie Bloom partly because the first effort to put sidewalks on on Collister, Debbie was very instrumental in that conversation. And I think we've come a long ways with Kootenai Street being a great example of how we can probably engage better. So.
And Debbie and I have had some great conversations about Collister and what we would see. And I think that we were able to find considerable middle ground. You know, I think I think she's developing in the way that she sees things as well. And yeah. I think that she's willing to work with us and to make something really good happen. She has a lot of history and a lot of knowledge about this street and this area, and she could be really very helpful in making something like that happen.
Yeah, no, she's phenomenal. And hence we reached out to her early on to let her know, but she'd also been following this closely. So with that being said, are there any other comments before we kind of just open it up for general dialogue, Colby or Hillary, or trying to see who else is on here? Leslie, do you guys have anything else, or Jamie Lou, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
I think maybe with us being the next CCDC district, how do we, and I know that that's not our purview right now, but how do we make sure that this is going to work for that future plan for that district?
CCDC, their urban renewal district is coming out of Collister?
Yeah, well, no, it's going to be at State in Collister, like Sycamore and State to Collister and State. So that whole plaza where you're talking about these coffee shops and whatnot, in theory, that's all going to get raised and redone. So how do we make sure that whatever we're planning now is going to work with what the next 5 years that CCDC Urban Renewal is planning for that area?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for us as the neighborhood association. This is something Hillary and I have talked about. If we can say, these are the projects coming forward and this is how they work together. I think that both of these projects are really going to be popular. We just have to figure out how to tell that story.
Exactly. And they need to be done in conjunction with each other. So we have a cohesive plan for all of the future issues. So yeah, that State and Collister intersection is where the next urban renewal district ends in theory. So,
right. So I wasn't aware that I knew that they had another urban renewal district in the works for, the Capitol Mall area into the Boise High, but I wasn't aware that they were stretching all the way down State Street.
Yeah, they're planning Sycamore to Collister from what the meeting we just had a few months ago, Kate, right? Is that right? Sycamore to Collister? 36 to Collister? I don't know how far, I can't remember.
Do you remember exactly? I thought it went out further than Collister, but basically they're in the corridor. And so it's part of that's brought up in a lot of different ways, but we could get the details.
But so I don't want to be short-sighted and plan something for this area and then like we're in the next 5-year plan for that urban renewal district, and then the next 5 years it'd be like it's not sufficient for what we need now with the new urban renewal district. So I just want to make sure like that's being kind of thought of together.
So I'll work with the city of Boise. They're already on the team, and the school district's already on the team, and the RT is already on the team. So I'll reach out to CCDC and make sure that they're also plugged into the efforts for what occurs from the intersection that's already been completed north. So if you take into account that turnoff into like the shopping center, the Collister Shopping Center, the biggest issues that would pertain to the corridor itself in discussion would be actually traffic volumes and capacity. Now, when we take into account capacity, so if you were to throw out traffic calming is important because there's such a large capacity that goes down Collister, traffic calming and capacity enhancement don't go hand in hand. You know,
Right.
so volume, if the having to deal with the volumes as a result of what goes on in Collister and have that folded over onto Collister neighborhood, I will say traffic calming will be a challenge, only because we're only going to create more congestion, which actually in essence creates traffic calming, slows people down. But for site, what I would emphasize is we don't want to wait for the, and it's not a declared urban renewal yet, even if it's under discussion, it hasn't been adopted yet. What we do not want to do is wait for the urban renewal district to get their things figured out by moving forward the efforts that pertain to your neighborhood. Unless you guys want us to put a halt to this and not have a discussion until they get their stuff figured out, we can plug them in on the planning team. But we could always wait until they figure out what they're going to do with the Collister Business Park right there before we address the issues that your guys' neighborhood brought to our attention regarding Collister. But I will tell you, it would push back any type of enhancements or facility treatments that we could consider 5, 10 plus years. So we should move forward, have this discussion about the corridor and what type of enhancements and facility treatments you want to see there and plug CCDC into the picture. But if intent is for us to find out what CCDC is going to do and what their vision is for their space before we have this discussion, I would hesitate that it's probably going to derail any opportunities for enhancements in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Only because they haven't, even if they're in a planning phase, they still have to get that adopted and it still has to move forward. And so I wasn't aware CCDC had identified that as a corridor for a new urban renewal district. So with that being said, I'm going to reach out to them and plug them in onto our planning team.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's not done like piecemeal and haphazard, you know, like, and make sure it's more of a unified.
Yes, well, knowing the city of Boise being on the team, they're going to help us identify what they're going to plan for that location. But as of now, and based off of the property owners at the Collister Business Park, there was no indication that they had anything beyond pavement rehabilitation of their facilities. Anything beyond that isn't what they had told us. And so we're trying to work in the now, recognizing that should an urban renewal district come in, it's going to be impactful, but I would hesitate to not have this conversation while we wait for the urban renewal district to get their stuff figured out.
Oh, totally appreciate that part.
Yeah.
I think
no, that is
I
not
had
what
a comment.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
I had a comment. Sorry, I'm Jamie Liu. I'm on the phone, but also on the screen.
Okay.
So, just one of the things that has come up over the years with our surveys of our neighborhood has really been the issue of speeding, which I think is where the safety thing has come from and some of the concerns. It's part of why the neighborhood really wanted to have a neighborhood watch is really about the speeding. So taking into consideration how that corridor looks, what gets slowed down, how it gets slowed down, how it becomes safe, and is it moving traffic into even quieter neighborhoods like we saw with the construction on State Street, and then now people have different travel patterns and are going 30 miles an hour down a 20-mile-an-hour road where a lot of kids walk. So it's something that's come up several times over the year. I imagine when you do the public input meetings that you'll hear that again. That will be some of the concern, you know, which will only get escalated if Collister Shopping Center does become a CCDC renewal area, right? How do we make sure that the things we like about our community, which is it's part ag, it's really quiet, you know, it's pretty safe. Not that we don't want anybody in our neighborhoods, we would just like them to mind the dang speed limit because there are dogs, cats, deers, children, elderly people, people on bikes, and yeah. So keep that in mind with that. Even that corridor for Collister, as things change there, that tends to divert traffic into other areas, right?
Yeah. and to go off of that as a team, have you guys noticed the diversion into adjacent streets? What adjacent streets kind of took the beating? Do you guys recall?
Catalpa.
Well, I know mine. Yeah,
Sycamore.
Catalpa did. Mine did. Sycamore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sycamore.
Thorn. I mean, I
Catalpa.
think all of those. Yep.
Honestly, that's one of the questions I kind of have. Is this
Taft.
does this just pertain to just the Collister Street? Because there's a few other roads within our neighborhood that could, I mean, almost use as much attention. Like Taft is super dangerous right now, and it is a ton of our refugee kids live down that road. They're walking back and forth between their apartments and the Collister shopping neighborhood. And that road is just waiting for a really bad accident to happen. So as much as I appreciate Collister Road and what it needs to, how it needs to be multifunctional, because I also do think about people that live in John's Landing. That's like one of the main access points into John's Landing for them, and they're part of our neighborhood association. So they're also wanting to try to get down the road in a manner that is, I don't want to say fast, but they want to be able to move through the space to get to their homes and to get into their neighborhood. So I feel like there is a need for for Collister to be functional for moving traffic and supporting those people that live in John's Landing, those people live back up north. But at the same time, there needs to be a lot done as far as supporting foot traffic, especially kids coming out of Collister Elementary. That's super dire to me. But I don't know, I mean, addressing this one road is really important, but if we don't address a few of these other ones, I don't know if we've hit the mark, I guess is what I would say.
Oh, Colby, that's a really good point. And so I think you're going to appreciate what I have to say next. Actually, Taft is up for a concept study next year. So I'll be coming back out to your neighborhood to have the similar type discussion just as it pertains to Taft. We scoped Taft a couple years ago regarding pedestrian facilities. It's kind of a bizarre street. It's very narrow at one end, very wide at the other end. And so we took a team out there to scope it, determining that we need to enhance it for pedestrian and bike facilities, especially because it is a main thoroughfare for people and kids to walk to the school. So just know that I will be back out here next year to address Taft alone. So,
well, if you want me to save you some time and money, we can just do that. We can just knock that out together right now, and you guys can get started.
Just put sidewalks on it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And some speed humps will be good.
Well, and that's the thing. We don't, and that's part of why we don't come in there with a decision, right, of what your street looks like. That's why we have these discussions, is because obviously we jump to like speed bumps as a solution, right? Well, for us to put in solutions on something like that, it's like 20 speed bumps. So, and then you look at one side of the street where it's really, really wide and they've already got existing sidewalks, but does it need to be that wide? If I'm going to slow traffic, what we oftentimes do is we go and we actually manipulate the road. We manipulate the infrastructure. We enhance it in a way that creates an illusion that the space is smaller. And as a result of creating that space to be smaller, we're also creating naturally a traffic calming mechanism. We're putting that in place. And so Taft, we're going to have the same conversations we're having now, same type of discussion again, and why these concepts are so important. And if something moves to concept level, it means because we don't have an obvious fix, or it's such an important corridor, or there's so many different variables, like Taft being narrow one side, really big. You've got the church that has this tree that is so special. Like you have all of these things. We don't want to go in there and just say one treatment applies everywhere, because it doesn't. We want to treat every road individually because it's got so many different variables and it's a neighborhood road. And so we'll be back to talk about Taft next year. We try to do these concepts where there's overlapping. So here I'm on Collister, right? And then the next one's Taft. And so you have that nexus between two projects that are going to go hand in hand. So, but yeah, Colby, I hope that helps. I'm going to be out there again. We're going to be seeing a lot of each other in the next couple of years.
Sounds good. No, I think that's great. And I appreciate the approach you guys are taking as far as getting input. I think you're going to have a lot more success, obviously, with that. approach than with just kind of saying, this is what we're going to do. Like, do you guys like it? Right. So I can appreciate that, but I do think it's, yeah, no, it's, and I'm glad you guys have identified it as well. I'll just say that.
Great. But Colby, just your point about multifunctional, the fact when we look at, especially when we look at Collister, especially when we look at Kootenai, we still have to move vehicles, right? We're never going to close a road. We still have to take into account people still need to traverse through that area. And if we do not approach it appropriately, what ends up happening is we're going to push people somewhere else. And so while we may not be talking about Sycamore, Catalpa, or any of those other streets are taken into consideration when we talk about Collister, because what we do on Collister is what we don't want to do is push somebody somewhere else. We don't want to make it such a hassle to get down Collister that you have found a better route somewhere else that's faster, because naturally we want to get somewhere faster. It's just, that's human nature, right? Like, I need to get point A to point B. I'm going to find the least resistance to make that happen. And sometimes unintended consequences is when we do something like a corridor study, we unintentionally may send you somewhere else, and we don't want that to happen. So your points about the other streets taking into consideration, while we're not talking on them and we're not going to do anything to them, they are taken into account when we talk about Collister.
Yeah, and going back to that point, like, we want to make Collister and make it accessible, but at the same time, it is a main thoroughfare for our neighborhood, and we don't want to push the cars to the side roads.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that it can absolutely be safe and do both jobs, but we don't want to push them into all the little back neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. And those would be things we take into account as a team. We will go back to the table and we do what's called modeling, and we say, okay, if we do this, what is it going to do somewhere else? And we're going to see how that flow looks. But yeah, we're not discounting the concerns about diversion into other streets.
So how do you balance that? How do you balance the, I guess the Collister is fairly wide and can probably accommodate, bike lanes and sidewalks and the vehicle traffic. But like you mentioned, 13th Street, that has an enormous amount of traffic, foot and vehicle. How without taking out 90% of everybody's front yard, how would you make that more accessible?
So as it pertains to 13th Street, it was more traffic calming, not sidewalk or ped enhancements. So there was no need to have any right-of-way access because they already had the ped facilities. But let's shift over to Kootenai. Kootenai Street's a good example because they didn't have a complete pedestrian facilities. So when we went out there, why we had 50 or some percent say they're in favor and the remaining amount against it was we actually went out there and we're going to take a foot of right-of-way. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but for those folks who are going to lose their right-of-way for us to put in the pedestrian facilities, that was a lot. And so we actually went back and usually our policy is we don't go below 11-foot travel lanes. On this one, we went below 11-foot travel lanes. We also put sidewalks only on one side. And then it's to ensure that we kept parking on the other side. And so we took all those concerns into account. It says what the blanket application, right? The rule that you have to have sidewalks on both sides, the fact that we threw that all out. And we said, we have to treat every road individually and not assume a blanket treatment is going to apply everywhere. And we're going to do the same thing with Collister. We're going to look at our cross section and say, okay, how can we, if traffic calming is important, you want people to slow down. If sidewalks is important, does it have to be sidewalks? Could it be something else? There's options out there. It used to be we only did sidewalks. Well, there's other treatments. Bike facilities, what does bike facilities look like now? So we really are going to go and examine, but first we're going to hear from you guys and hear what's important. Like, you want it multifunctional, you guys want people to slow down, you don't want to divert traffic, you like this agricultural type feel, and we're going to have to take all of that into consideration, go to the drawing table and work within what is available to us. And that's when we come back out and say, okay, is the footprint we have curb to curb, is it big enough to fit everything everybody wants? And if it is, then we're gonna work with that. If it's not, what does the concession look like? And it is a process, because our approach is so different than it was in the past. It's a process to get us in the right direction to figure out what works for everybody. So Leslie, I wish I had the right answer. The right answer is going to be engaging with you guys to get us there. And first and foremost, I had to figure out what that is. And then we go to the drawing table, and you know what? We hire engineers for a reason. They're going to figure it out. I just have to tell them, here's what we want, and we're gonna work through it until we get it right. So, but we get it the first time. What's that?
I just said this is excellent. I think that the new approach will really work well. And I think there are lots of areas of commonality, even though people have some very strongly held concerns, but we're more on the same page than we're not. And I think it'll go well. I'm looking forward to this.
Great.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for people to know what options other than sidewalks are. I mean, just, I guess, what all of the options are. I don't know if that would be, you know, giving too many choices sometimes can come back and bite you, but I think that it would be helpful.
Well, and we're careful also not to come out right now and say what those are, because what happens, like we did, you know, 10, 11 years ago, we came out and said sidewalks. Everybody had their mind made up. Absolutely not. I'm going to lose property. I'm going to do this, or you're going to take that valuable tree that is so important to my family, right? All of these things. And it derailed the process early on. And so by engaging with you guys to find out what's important to you, and then coming out with options to say, here's what we heard. Here's what we heard you didn't want. Here's what we potentially could do. And here's what we're going to work within. And it literally, everything's on the table. There's nothing off the table. And so it's important to know that we're going to go in there and hear what you guys have to say. And we're going to come back and we're going to send the engineers and us planners to a room, and we're going to draw it out a solution and come back to you and say, did we get it right? And we're just going to keep going through that process until we do. That's why there's no time frame on completion of this. Ideally, the sooner we get it done, the sooner we actually get to move to design, and we actually get it moved to construction, and you get results faster. But I'm not going to come in and say we're going to be done with this in 3 months, because the only way we're going to get something that works for your neighborhood is if we do this collectively over time.
Sounds good to me.
So you're saying we're going to get it done in 3 months. We can put that out on Facebook. Is that okay, Brooke?
No. If you want no public engagement, by all means, I can get it done in 3 months. I can have it done next week. Yeah. And that's why I appreciate your guys' time. Is really, my hope is by having this discussion with the leaders in your neighborhood, that you guys are going to go out there and share this, and that it's going to be something that we may not have a solution, right? You can't champion a solution, right? Because we don't know what it is, but I'm hoping that you guys can champion the process and really help engage your neighbors. I will tell you how we're going to engage with your neighbors. So what I hope not to hear is that, oh, I never heard about this. And next thing you know, the next thing they're hearing about is the construction on their street. So here's how I approach my projects, how I approach Kootenai, and how I'm going to approach your guys' street. This engagement first, and then we're going to have in 2 weeks, we're going to be putting door hangers out on everybody's door who resides on Collister. They're going to receive a door hanger to invite them to the June 24th PIM. And then based off of the sign-in sheet on June 24th, I'm going to be able to cross-reference who signed in for the open house and who resides on that street and didn't attend. And if you didn't attend the workshop or participate in the public comment, you're going to get a personal letter from me that says, hey, we invited you to this. I noticed you didn't participate in the public comment and you didn't participate in the open house. I want to engage with you one more time. Please call me. I want to talk to you about Collister. And then we're going to do that same type of engagement all the way through this process. So I'll know who showed up at the open houses, who engaged, who received a nice little letter from me that says, hey, I noticed you didn't participate. I want to invite you one more time. And partly it's because what I don't want is somebody to come around and say, you never reached out to me. And so we found a lot of success when we did this on Kootenai, is we got more engagement because we didn't just let them go away. We kept nudging them until they participated. So
one question for you, as we're telling people about this, a lot of the people who are very interested in the development in Collister live on adjacent streets, are
Yep.
they invited to participate? I mean, obviously they're not gonna have the same weight as someone who lives on the street, but
Yep.
can we put this out to them too? Because they're all very excited.
Well, and Hollister, as much as it's those who reside on it, it's their neighborhood street, right? It's everybody's neighborhood street
Right.
because everybody uses it. So we have what's called like the footprint on a project. The footprint expands beyond Hollister. It's this area around it, kind of the area of impact. So you will all get a mailer that says participate in this, and it goes into those adjacent streets. So
Okay.
what we're going to really want is you guys, once I get this information, I'll send it to you to promote it out that says, hey, come participate in this, talk about it. But what we really want not to be mentioned is come talk about sidewalks, because sidewalks may not be the right solution, right? So what we really want to do is deter about having it very solution oriented up front, and really just say, come help us create a vision for our neighborhood to ensure that every mode can travel comfortably. Those are the conversation pieces. That's why we want to have this engagement early on for that very reason.
Okay.
So is there anything else you guys want to highlight? Anything, this won't be the last time we talk. We're going to talk again. Through this whole process, I'll be reaching out to you guys just to kind of keep you updated. I think it's so important. You're the leaders of your neighborhood. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, you were elected into these roles to participate in this way. And so I really appreciate you guys, one, for stepping up to be part of your neighborhood association, but also helping us as we go down this new path, because we're going to be spending a lot of quality time together in the next 6 months or a year or however long. So I will put this out just so you guys are aware. If this project moves into the winter months, so we're going to start these engagements. We'll have our first open house June. We'll have a second one in September. Based off of what we hear in September, we'll make a determination. Do we go out again? And if we go out again, it's because I don't think we got it right. I want to leave my elected officials with an easy, obvious adoption. And if I don't make it right, it's going to make it really hard for them to adopt it. So if we were to find ourselves into January, February, March months, I'm going to be upfront because I disappear for those months. I'm a state representative for District 18. And so I serve in the legislature for 3 months, for this year, 5 months out of the year. And then I go back to ACHD. And so if we find ourselves moving into those months, I'll communicate that up front, and we just we go quiet. And then when I come back, we'll start the engagement again after I return. So be aware, but what really important is my absence isn't going to determine the outcome. So regardless, if I think we don't have it right, then my employer is comfortable moving this into the spring months because it's important that we actually get this right. So, but I want you guys to be aware, so you're aware if we do goes into those months, I will disappear and reappear later. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Kate, I've got your information. Yes, I will take all that down and communicate to you. And so, Kate, is the preference we send everything to you and you disseminate out to your team?
That's probably the easiest way to do things. Although if we start having detailed conversations, we might just loop everyone in. But if it's just a matter of, hey, can you schedule a meeting and do X, Y, and Z, then that's probably easiest.
Perfect. Great. And like I said, everything that we have in conversation is all public record. So anything outside of that gets communicated out. But we just wanted to have this conversation early to help control the message and really kind of look to you guys to help us as we move this forward, really champion the process because the process is going to give us the best outcome. And the more we all participate, the better off we're all going to be. So, and because I want, guys, we keep hearing it every time I've gone out there to do a plan with your guys' neighborhood. Hollister always gets brought up, always. And so we wanted things to die down from the last time my colleagues were out there to where we are now. We think now is a good time to go have that conversation. Also, we are moving projects a lot faster. When we have these conversations, we want to move them into concept, into design, into construction. It used to be that we'll come out there, visit with you, and then maybe 10 years show up and build whatever we talked about. That's not the case anymore. We really are trying to move these projects forward so you guys can see the outcome of your participation. So.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you looping us in early, and we'll be as helpful as we can be.
Great. Lots of conversation that Kate, I think you put up here. Issue traffic study to see if speeding on Collisters. Yeah, we were already on top of that. There's always a perception of speeds. Yes. Okay.
So, okay, but yeah. Does anybody else have anything before we let Brooke go?
Is this something we're going to put on our website, that PIM? Should we be putting something like this out on the Collister Neighborhood Association website? So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Brooke's going to send me the information and I will prioritize getting it up on the website and our social media. And we'll probably also send out a blast to the neighborhood, just catching people in whatever way they would like to be caught.
Yes. The more we engage, the more, I mean, what I don't want to hear from anybody is I didn't know this was going on. And I do everything in my power to make sure that that doesn't happen, but there's always those one or two who slip through. With that being said, the landing page isn't up yet. The conversation, why we wanted to have this with you guys first is now that I have the conversation, we'll get the landing page, we'll go live. So that'll start going out. And then the next thing will be the door hangers that will happen. And then we'll have the PIM followed by the letters that they'll get from me if you don't show up. And we're just going to keep that process until we get it right.
Yeah, we'll just follow your lead. You send something to me and say, publicize this, and then we'll do it.
Yep. With that being said, feel free to talk about it. It's, the more we have these conversations, the better, but just also, we do not have the solution for your street. Just putting that out there. So you guys are going to help us figure out what that solution looks like and take into account all of those adjacent streets. Colby, you're right. We can do something really good to one street, but all we did is create a mess somewhere else. And it happens all the time. And it's something that we have to be really cognizant about when we do projects such as this.
No, I appreciate that you guys are thinking about it. Have you talked to your friends at Planning and Zoning about your guys' process? That might help them out a little bit. It might be a good thing to try.
It's a we at ACHD have come a long ways, and some of the hardest lessons learned are the ones where we didn't do something right. So we came out to your neighborhood 11 years ago and we didn't do it right. So it took us a couple tries to figure out what the best approach is, and once we championed Kootenai, we knew we got it right. So we knew at that point we should come out and talk to you guys. So
this is great. Thank you.
Yeah. And for planning and zoning folks, best wishes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Brooke.
You're welcome. And Kate, when we started out the conversation, there was lots of sidebar issues that you wanted to talk about. And so feel free
to follow up. Yeah.
I
thought you were telling us about a plan for our neighborhood as a whole, not that it was focused on Collister. So I had misunderstood the original thing.
No. And that's why we have this, because if we don't have these discussions early on and we let something get out for an open house, right, then everybody just reads into it what they want and they don't recognize that. So that's why we had this. That's why I'm chatting with you guys. You're the leaders in your neighborhood. You guys are elected to do your jobs. It's my job to make sure I give you the information to be able to do it. So
thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care, folks. And feel free to email me if you have any questions. Okay. Take care.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye-bye.